Blood Brothers.
Remember Ted Corporation? Yeah, the guys behind the gorgeous Toki and obviously the highly frantic Cabal. These two got proper home ports for practically all systems available by then, but Blood Brothers was completely left aside. It retained that humorous side of Cabal, but in a western setting, in where we could play the role of one of two brothers, a cowboy or an American Indian. Yeah, brothers, Blood Brothers. I can only conclude that shooting innocent horses and can-can women wasn't certainly a very welcome thing that developers would want to bring to home computers and consoles.
Cliffhanger, Edward Randy.
When I first heard that a Cliffhanger movie with Sylvester Stallone was arriving to cinemas in 1993, I first thought that it was based on Edward Randy's crazy adventures at the arcades 3 years prior. Needless to say that I was completely mistaken. So Data East offered us an action-packed and visually outstanding sort of scrolling beat-em-up that masterfully uses an overwhelming sprite scaling technique. It was obviously inspired on Indiana Jones' adventures, that also introduces a whip as Edward's main weapon. The game is so frenetic that can be extremely disorienting and painful to play and watch, with also a slow and inaccurate whip attack. But in the end, all this frantic action and chaos compensates, and that's what really matters in a video game. I personally love games that present challenges to players, and Edward Randy the Cliffhanger is a freaking outstanding piece of a challenge that kind of reminds me of Gunstar Heroes mixed up with Uncharted and Castlevania.
That connection.
Did you watch the movie The Untouchables from 1987, directed by Brian De Palma and starred by Kevin Costner and Andy Garcia? The two main characters from that connection really does strike some resemblance to those two actors from The Untouchables, don't you also agree? That connection was developed and released by Taito back in 1992, this shoot 'em up in where we simply have to clear New York from all bad guys. There are 4 selectable characters for up to 2 players, and each level demands that we take down a certain number of thugs, and being a shoot 'em up, that connection is a bit different from the traditional side-scrolling action that its genre is known for. Every stage happens in one single screen, but don't let that fool you. The layouts for every stage are really nice and diverse, and the scenery turns to pieces during the gunfights. I would have loved to play that connection back in the day on my Mega Drive, but it's a total mystery why it was never converted to home systems. Let me know down in the comments section below if you've played it at your local arcades.
Mystic Warriors.
The huge success of Sunset Riders led to Konami's decision of using that exact same template and release 2 years later Mystic Warriors that offers that exact same mechanics, but in a different and futuristic setting that even pays an homage to its older brother right in the beginning of the game. So we play as one of 5 ninjas presented and must find our way through these enemy-infested levels, accompanied by a freaking amazing soundtrack playing in the background. Enemies and bosses attack us not only from the sides, but also from the top and bottom of the screen, and there's a few interesting weapons and power-ups to send them back to where they came.
Final Star Force.
The third chapter of the popular Star Force series arrived in 1992, and whilst the original was ported to the Famicom and Sega Master System, and the second entry named Super Star Force was a Famicom exclusive, Final Star Force remains also exclusive, but for arcades. It didn't bring anything new or innovative to the vertical scrolling genre, but because of that, it's a pretty solid shooter. It has beautiful and colorful graphics and a decent soundtrack and effects, but what really nails it is the friendly difficulty curve. It's quite a simple game that we pick up and play, excluding the over-the-top gameplay of many other similar titles, both in the options available and gameplay areas. If you have a sweet spot for the genre, go play it, it's really worth it.
Batman.
You might think that Batman, this arcade game, was somehow related to Ocean Smash It for 8 and 16-bit on computers of late 80s, but no. This was Atari and Numega's own take on Tim Burton's first amazing Bat movie, that is still my favorite after all these years. Being based on the same movie would obviously seem like the developers shared ideas for the conversion, but even having the same gameplay elements, they're completely different from one another. And the more advanced hardware present on arcades by that time would also offer a ton more ways to expand that Ocean formula. The music is a freaking amazing chiptune rendition of the movie's original soundtrack, and the action is highly frenetic. And if you love the character as much as I do, you'll also be totally addicted to this Batman exclusive arcade game.
The pen is truly mightier than the sword.
Growl.
You know how sucker I am for Indiana Jones style of games, and these characters from Growl really resemble Dr. Jones' character. I recall being the first to try out this new arcade game when it arrived at one of my local arcades. The technician that installed it even gave me a bunch of credits to try it out and start the fuss. I was immediately hooked, and besides that, it carries a strong message. We play the role of a sort of wild animal lover and forest ranger who must protect the wildlife from a group of evil men that are driving this species to extinction. Species that includes lions, deers, elephants, eagles, and others. Along the way, we'll encounter several cases of animal cruelty that we must stop. Besides the traditional fist fighting, weapons can also be found and collected, even including grenades, rocket launchers, whips, and swords. The ammo available is quite limited, so use it wisely. But let me tell you that in Growl, it's really difficult to stay wise when all these thugs attack us simultaneously. Gladly, our wild friends will offer help in these more complicated situations. This is another example of an arcade game that can be enjoyed by 4 players simultaneously, depending on the cabinet, obviously, and a year later was ported exclusively for the Mega Drive Genesis.
Surprise attack.
Somewhat inspired by both Shinobi and Shadow Dancer, Surprise Attack would really surprise us all, with its furious action and trigger-happy moments combined with superb sprite scaling effects that can completely dazzle our minds. In this futuristic setting, in the year 2031 to be more precise, we're invited to play the role of Sergeant John Ryan that must stop the invasion of one of Earth's moon bases by the interplanetary terrorist group known as Black Dawn, simply by defusing time bombs. And that's pretty much it. It's basically a coin swallower arcade game that punches players in the face asking for more and more. It didn't bring anything new to the run and gun genre, but the beauty of its graphics and ambience really deserves a shout out.
Crime Fighters.
The Double Dragon success formula was cloned and used by so many other arcade titles, and Crime Fighters was no exception. Except this one never came home. Capcom was the master of scrolling fighters, but Konami also wanted a slice of that same pie. Up to 4 players could join in to try and rescue 7 girls that were kidnapped by a so-called fat toad. Just look at this advert! How cheesy is this? By that time, young kids like myself would idolatrize guys like Jean-Claude Van Damme and Michael Dudikoff and wanted to be like them. This genre would allow us to portray this mighty street fighter who beats the hell out of bad guys and in the end saves the girl. In this case, saves 7 girls. And the music is freaking awesome. Hey! It's 15 girls after all and not 7. And just look at this even cheesier line. Do you mind being kidnapped again? By me? Thank you very much for watching and I'll see you all in my next video. Cheers!